Hello and welcome to this Divine Partnership Coaching video. I wanted to try to do a short talk about dreams and how they relate to the twin flame journey, which I think I'm probably going to end up doing more of a series on, for one, because it's difficult to know exactly what to pinpoint, and everybody's dreams end up being a little bit different, and well, they can be many things. I think for relevance, though, to the twin flame journey, mostly, well, first of all, what I'm going to recommend right off the bat to anybody that is either recognizing that they're having dreams that are related to their divine partner, divine counterpart, or, well, just any dreams in general. It's sometimes they're not going to be like recognizably relevant off the bat, but then later they might fit. Like if you have a dream about a snake one night, and then a hawk another night, and then like 3 days later you see a snake on the ground that looks like a bird picked it up, ate half of it, and dropped it. That might have been a little bit, not necessarily a prophetic dream, but it could have been spirit kind of saying, hey, look, we can give you messages. We can tell you things. Here's a simple thing that happened. Or the best thing I can think to do is to use examples that I've had. So when, it's funny, like I had a dream before I met my counterpart. And it was funny because in the dream I didn't recognize him. Like I couldn't see his face, but I could see the silhouette of his body, and I could feel his presence. It was really odd, and I didn't even really connect the dream until like a week after I'd spent time with him, and was like, that's kind of creepy, right? I was already on my pagan path by then, so it wasn't like overly creepy, but it was like creepy in a cool sort of way. And then there was a dream, and I still remember it because I had a... Oh, there's so many dreams. There's a dream that I had, I want to say after... Let's see, we had connected, we'd spent like a good 7 months together, then we had time of separation, then we reconnected for a couple of months, then we had like a long... It was like almost 2 year separation, and then when I saw him, I only saw him like 3 or 4 times, and ended up pregnant with our oldest son. And when I was pregnant with him, I assumed that because I was more of a third party in there, like I told him, I'd love to have you here, and I know that our child would, but I don't want to be like these other people. I didn't know the term karmic at the time, but for ease and grace, I'm going to say I didn't want to be like what I was recognizing the karmics around him were being like, which is like, well, you got me pregnant, now you got to be here, you got to do all this, you got to pay for this, you got to do that. No, I wanted to recognize that it takes two, and that I wanted him to be there if he wanted to be there, and rather than having somebody there who, by accident at the time, got involved with me, and we ended up pregnant. And ironically, my ability to say, well, like, I want you, but I don't need you, actually scared him off. And he was also trying to figure out how to have said conversations with other people, and was already wrapped up in a whole lot of karmic cycles at the time. And I really didn't know what to think. We didn't really have... what's funny is, now that I think back to it, telepathically, he was communicating to me that he wanted to be there and that he was going to be there, but he was wrapping up situations, and he was feeling really inadequate, like he didn't have enough... He didn't have his finances together. His living situation had been taken over by other karmics and things of that nature, and he didn't want to come to me with nothing and a whole bunch of drama, which is what he confirmed later on, too. But I had a dream during that time, and it's funny because in the dream, we were at a park, and there was 2 benches, and one of the benches had some friends of mine, some friends of him, and a bunch of, like, shadow figures. And he was hanging out with them, and I was sitting at the other bench wearing a purple shirt and crying. And I didn't feel like I was, in the dream, it felt like I was never going to get to see him again, and I didn't know where life was going to go. And I had effectively, well, I don't want to say I ended my karmic relationship for him, but a lot of what characterized the relationship I was in was, one, I was doing it because I was trying to distract myself from interfering in his life with his karmic marriage, and 2, a lot of the fights that kept coming up, despite that I never mentioned him and never did anything, like, didn't see him, nothing, didn't call, didn't talk. My karmic partner at the time was constantly telling me that he knew that I was really in love with my counterpart, and I should just go find him, and we shouldn't do this. It was funny. So, like, when I left my karmic partner, I mean, despite everything that I tried, I could not. Spirit made it so that I continued to remember him, and I'm grateful for that. I just find it kind of funny. It's like, you do almost anything. In fact, the harder you try to not think about and not love your counterpart, the worse it will get. That is one of the characteristics, I think, of the twin flame journey in particular. But, about the time that I had that dream, I was really depressed, and I didn't know what to do. And I assumed that I was not bossy enough, and not dramatic enough, and not demanding enough for his tastes. And so when the dream started, I assumed that it was one of those kind of prophetic, in the sense of, yeah, you're not going to see him anymore. And what's funny is then, it kind of became a lucid dream at that point. Like, I was aware what was going on in the dream, and I remember even kind of like crying in the 3D while just staying present in the dream. And he came over to me in the dream, and he sat next to me, and he put his hand on my hand, and he kissed me on the cheek, and he said, "Don't worry, everything will be okay. Just trust. It'll work out. I'll see you again." And I started crying so hard that the dream started to end, and I could see the people on the other bench, like, staring at us, mouth open and not saying anything, and some of them really upset about it. And then the dream ended. And oh, that's so funny. Somebody at the gas station across from this park is playing that song, "Making my dreams come true." Ooh, 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 ooh. See, that's synchronicity. If you watch my other videos about synchronicity, that right there is synchronicity. And it probably means my counterpart, in some way, shape, or form, is either thinking about the dream I'm describing or the next part that I'm about to talk about, which is that it would have been like 11 years later, when we lost the house that we were in and we moved into my parents' house. There was a park nearby that I found, and it's so funny because it took me 2 times there to recognize that the park seemed familiar. And then we had our first separation fight. Like, I mean, we'd had some fights before early on that kind of dealt with drinking and things like that, but we'd never had, like in 14 and a half years, we'd only spent, well, let's see, like, for the first 7 of it, there was only like 2 nights that we spent not together. And then I started doing a spiritual trip every year, so that'd be like 1 week out of the year that we wouldn't spend right with each other, and we liked it that way. But when we had that first breakup fight, and then it was time to go and talk, he had wanted to go to a Dairy Queen and talk, and I said, "You know what, I'm going to this park. If you want to come and talk to me, I'll be there." And after he came, I realized 2 things. One, I was wearing the purple shirt that I had in the dream, and when I had that dream, I did not own that purple shirt. And when I bought that shirt, I wasn't thinking about the dream. And there was literally a moment that day when he sat with me just the way that he did in the dream, and he kissed me just the way he did in the dream, and he told me that everything would be okay. And the funny thing was, is I assumed that that was the prophetic part of the dream, but there were some things that were a little bit off. It wasn't until this recent separation, actually, that I went back to that park thinking about that day, and I was actually trying to, one, distract myself, two, heal a little bit, and three, kind of trying to call his attention and his energy. And I ended up doing a video while I was there about that dream, and I realized the irony was that that dream was still coming about. There was a reason why I'd actually had that dream again, because it was meant that there's a coming moment that will be relevant and important. And the funny thing was, that day that I went to the park, I ended up wearing the same purple shirt, and I wasn't planning to go to that park that day, nor thinking about the dream at all, until I got there, and I went, oh, you know what, I had this dream again right before he left. The other thing I can say is, like, there was a while when we were not connecting very well, before we moved and after we moved. And here's the funny thing. I'm Capricorn Venus, Capricorn Sun, I have a lot of Capricorn. I'm very loyal, and for the most part, very exclusive. I mean, I'm open to the idea of poly and things like that, and I even tried to explore it a little bit, but I really am Capricorn Venus. You're like a swan. You pick one, and that's all you want. That's really all you want. But we weren't connecting very well, and I was aware, but not aware that there were karmics that were still playing a part in things. They'd always kind of been there, but for the most part, I didn't bother myself about them. But then I did start to bother myself about them when we started to have disconnects, because I had not healed my own anxious attachment challenges, and was over focusing on his problems, because I had done a lot of work on myself, and then felt like, you know what, I don't see you catching up and growing, and I'm tired of blaming myself. I know it's not all my fault, and started really, like, hammering in on his stuff, because I wanted the relationship to grow. And I started having a lot of dreams about, well, it was dreams of me, like, doing things with other guys, and it was it was as bad as if I'd really been doing it. Like, it really ate at me that much. And I remember even telling him about it, like, this is bad. I'm having these dreams, and I don't feel like the fulfillment between us, and I know that I need some more attention. I need some more reciprocity, and I need more growth from you too. Like, it feels like I'm growing and you're just staying there, and anytime I mention the littlest thing, becomes this huge fight. And which certainly didn't characterize the beginning of our relationship, but those dreams, I didn't realize until after. Like, I thought that they were, one, mostly just psychological and saying you're unhappy. I mean, because sex dreams are rarely actually about sex. And it's funny, because most of the other dreams that are not sexual are often about sex. But they felt like they were a prediction of what was to come, and that's not a part of my identity at all. I don't even like the idea of thinking about it. And it got me worried, and I realized, actually, after we separated, that those dreams were actually his fears. Especially as we got closer to talking about marriage, and a lot of the dreams that I had characterized a fair amount of what happened in his karmic marriage. And they would then, then you mix in my own fears of things in that, and there was a time later that he had a vision that fit in very much with that. It was kind of a devil card vision, and then he had his own dream where I don't know, I swear in the dream it was him with me, but he saw me in my RV art/office space, sitting there with a guy. I swear, the way he described it, it sounds like it was him in there with me, And like, everybody in a dream that you have is usually a representation of a piece of yourself. So even me was a part of that. Like, you could say like, maybe I was his heart, or maybe the 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 guy that he saw there was his heart, and it was there with me, and he felt like an outsider. Like, but that very much is kind of what it's like right now, where we're separated, where his heart is with me, but his body isn't. And he's had several dreams too that I don't want to go and leave his dreams on there, but they're easy to recognize when you listen to them, that he's still feeling connected to me, and despite all the effort to convince himself that the karmic situation that he's in is what he wanted and what he needed, and going rainbows and roses and all Brady Bunch, the dreams show, no matter what it looks like on the outside, where his heart really is. And I'm going to try to keep this a little bit shorter too. I had another dream that has stuck out that actually came back to me, and it was a really funny one, because it really, before I learned about the twin flame journey, it kind of reminded me that there are some relationships that not only cross lifetimes, but they can cross other dimensions of reality too. And I'm going to try to keep this dream short. When I was younger, I had a lot of dreams, and dreams that still confuse me to this day, and experiences that did. I swear there was a couple of moments I even, like teleported between places, but if I did, it was a jump across the timeline, and all the adults thought I was nuts, so there was no way to prove it other than what's in my memory. So who knows on that? I'm not trying to end up in a padded room. So, but one of the primary kinds of dreams I would have would be like going into the first house that I was born in, or ironically my grandfather's house, which is the house that me and my counterpart lived in for 11 years. And there would be like an attic space or a crawl space, and in the dream I would go and crawl into that, and if you went far enough, it was kind of Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe-y, to where you go and you'd end up in a new place. And I forgot all about these dreams until about 5 years ago, when I was really depressed, and I didn't know what to do about things. There wasn't anybody offering readings or encouragement on how to deal with the feelings and heal various things going on. And so I slept a lot, and one of the dreams came back to me, and I ended up going to this other dimension. And it's funny, because when I got out, like, this guy picked me up, and it was kind of he had blonde hair, but he had a beard in a goatee shape that my counterpart had for a long time. His hair was curly in the same way. The only difference was it was blonde, and I didn't actually recognize that until later. But what's funny is I went to go get in the car with him, because I recognized him from my childhood dreams. Like, when I got in there, it was like, where am I? Oh, wow, I haven't been to this place since I was like my youngest kid's age. And he was one of the other dimension kids that I played with, and I remember as a kid it felt so real too. It was odd. And I didn't grow up in a family that recognized dream time or shamanism or anything. It was just very, yeah, you had a dream, so what, shut up. Or, no, of course that couldn't be real or anything like that. It's just, I learned to keep them to myself. But the guy in there, his name was Mike in that dimension, he took me around and showed me all these things and introduced me to the other kids in the dream that I used to come and play with, and like really updated me on where things were. And we went, and it felt like we spent like a day together. And there was a moment when he said something, and I looked at him, and this dream was so lucid. It felt like, like I'm right here talking to you in this video. It felt kind of like that. Like, it felt very, very real. But I was also lucid enough to recognize that this wasn't everyday. This wasn't the reality, the dimension that my vessel is in, I guess. See, this is why dream videos are complicated to explain, especially in twin flame journey. In any case, there was a moment that he said something, and I was looking at him and recognizing familiarities and like, what is it about you? I even asked him, what is it that is so familiar about you? And he looked at me, and in that moment, I saw my counterpart's eyes. His eyes were exactly the same, and his eyebrows were exactly the same. Some of the other features were different, but then he also had the same curly hair and the same goatee and the same otherwise physical. It was amazing, and he even like sentiently told me like, yes, I am your counterpart, and I've known you for lifetimes and throughout many dimensions and many timelines. And there are some things that are about to happen that I can't even explain for you, but I want you to give grace to me, effectively, the me in your dimension who I know is not connecting with you right now, and I know that you're sad. And if I could, I would keep you here in this dimension and be with me forever and ever and ever, because we did connect here. We connected here when we were kids, and we've had so much fun, and I called you back to this place. You actually weren't supposed to come back in here because the people here are aware of the dream time and they want to get to your dimension, and you had stopped coming to prevent that, but I had to see you at least one last time, and I could feel that you were not doing okay. And I want you to have hope, and I want you to recognize that the man that you love is in there, and just hold on to that. And then, it's funny, this is where then it becomes really bizarre, is in that dimension there was like a weird castle that was actually a science lab, and like the villains of the place were the scientists, and you never really saw them, but I remember a whole bunch of dreams as a kid, like, being caught a few times, going in and out, having to escape, doing things like that. But what sucks with this time was really the last time that I would be able to go there, and on the way out, that my counterpart in that dimension had said, look, I have to really blow up this access point. We didn't actually destroy it before, but we blocked it and hid it, but now they know. And it was a huge risk to take, and I'd hoped that we'd maybe have a few more days that you could come back, but it's done. And he kissed me, and we went. He basically sent me back before I even had a chance to argue. I was already going in the portal, and when I came out of it, it was destroyed, and there was no way to go back. I spent a good week trying to figure out how to recreate a new one and get back there, because that connection felt so much more real than the one that my counterpart and I were having in reality. But it was so odd and so real and yet not real at the same time. But because of what was going on at that time, I probably spent a good day crying, and I'd say my counterpart didn't even really know what was really going on, but I was so torn up. I wanted that, the essence, the spirit of him that I knew, to come back to me, and it was difficult to leave that. In any case, a lot of dreams will, I think I'm probably going to do another shorter video about the dreams, but so let's just say these are some examples of some dreams that you might have twin flame journey. I know some clients that I work with and some other divine femmes and masculines have very similar dreams. They'll have something, that tells them their partner is coming, or how their partner is feeling, or that it'll reaffirm the connection. Or sometimes spirit will use it just to simply remind you of them, so that you are thinking of them, especially if you are really glowing up and leveling up. Alright, everybody, I'm kind of running low on battery here, so give me some feedback about this. I guess this is more of some experiences with twin flame dreams and some stories on it. I'll try to do a more pithy video that gives a little bit more concise information. But for now, thanks for watching.